Hi, Brandon Monroe here, and you're listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Well, I was really hoping to just bury this music for a while, but based off of everything that Las Vegas produced, we're back using it again. I'm Brandon Monroe, and alongside me, as always, is Mark Chavez, and joining us for the first time in a long time, Jeremy Miller. How's it going, Jeremy?
All right, just
Yeah.
happy to be getting towards the end of the season.
I think we're all at that point right now. Um, Obviously, everybody's going to be talking about the Cup race. As always, let's start with the first race of the weekend, the Xfinity Series race. Looked like it was going to be Noah Gragson cruising to the victory. Unfortunately for Noah, Homestead got a little bit of a jump start on him. We're used to seeing him get screwed out of wins there. Kind of happened to him here at Vegas. Had a huge lead, I believe, on Ty Gibbs. I think it was around 6 seconds, and we had a caution for a car getting loose. I'll just be honest and say what we saw. There were people at the race. I know our buddy Mocha, he's been on the podcast before. He actually messaged us and said, "Hey, what was this yellow for? We didn't see anything on the track. Brandon Jones got loose. Very similar incident earlier in the race with Trevor Bayne, where he saved the car. Also, I think this is pretty similar to what we saw happen to Brandon Jones at Texas a couple weeks ago at the very beginning of the race where there was no yellow thrown. So NASCAR throws a yellow. As maybe Tony Stewart's SRX series would call a fun flag, because that's really what it felt like. And Noah Gregson's lead gone. Next thing you know, Josh Berry, credit to him, he steps up to the plate, he battles to the lead, he wins the race. Drastically affects the playoff picture. Berry was out. He was pretty close with Austin Hill and AJ Allmendinger for that last spot at the time. Now Berry's in. Noah Gragson, Ty Gibbs, they're still pretty safe. Justin Allgaier now with a 15-point lead over Austin Hill. 16 back to AJ Allmendinger, who struggled, had some tire issues, finished multiple laps down, picked a really bad time for his worst race of the year. Just, it's so frustrating to see what happened here, because there's no reason for that yellow. And not only did you drastically affect the race, you turn the point system, the point standings just upside down. And you're in a drastically different situation than it would have been if you let the race play out naturally.
I mean, at the end of the day, I don't disagree with any of it. Obviously, it upset a lot of things, but this wouldn't exist without the playoffs. This would be a caution. Any other year, it would be something people brought up, but it wouldn't feel like it's another item to point to over the last couple of months that haven't gone well. But I mean, at the end of the day, they all did pit under the same situation, and Gregson still could have won the race. I don't want to act like this is like he was obviously had to go out there and get it again, but there wasn't a mistake on pit road. They just didn't get it done.
That's fair, and that's why I don't want to discredit Josh Berry for that, because he needed to step up, and he did, and he was able to take control of the race from there and ultimately won. It wasn't like Berry was awful. He had a solid day. It's just, Gragson had that race, I don't want to say on lock. There was still a decent amount of laps left, and I joke about Homestead, but we've seen him lose at Homestead in crazy ways too. So not out of the realm of possibility. Something could have happened. Could have had a tire go down. There could have been a real accident, but it's just frustrating. I think my major frustration is this just compiles on everything that's happened over the last 2 months, and you have another issue like this. It really just kind of makes you want to bash your head through a wall.
Yeah, it's the sanctioning body has been through probably one of the worst stretches, if not the worst stretch that they've ever been through in the history of the entire sport. It feels like anything they can get wrong, they've gotten wrong for almost half the year now. And you have all the injuries on the Cup side. You have Kurt's announcement this past weekend. It's just it all comes back to the sanctioning body. It really feels like they're just kind of piling in on themselves at this point. They can't stop shooting themselves in the foot. And The playoffs are one of those things that have been probably less popular with some of the older fans going back, because most people don't really like the idea of a single race determining the champion than versus the classic entire season format. And then you do something like this that makes it look even more like a joke, those fans are just going to be more upset. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that even makes it less enjoyable for a casual fan, probably, because it may, you sit there an entire Saturday afternoon watching an Xfinity race, and then a god awful call like that changes the outcome of the race. It's going to leave a sour taste in anyone's mouth. So it's just really a bad look for the sport right now.
Yeah, I mean, you saw that from a lot of people, and I think a lot of people were outspoken about everything going on after last week with the Cole Custer situation. And this, in the grand scheme of things, nowhere near as bad as what you saw at, or not what you saw at the Roval. I think we all agree that was pretty fair game. More so the penalty after that just makes you feel like the people running the show right now are just completely disconnected from what is actually going on. At least it feels that way, This one, I think, is your typical NASCAR fun flag. You've seen it happen all the time, and it's it's just frustrating. And at least Noah took it in stride. He had a nice soundbite after the race. Haven't heard that one before, driving your nutsack off, but I gotta laugh out of that. So, I think he's in a good spot unless something catastrophic happens in these next two races. I think he's fine. Justin Allgaier, Ty Gibbs, they're a little bit closer to that cut line. I don't know how they're going to feel after everything's all said and done, but where we're at right now, they got Austin Hill and AJ Allmendinger. Those are the guys that you got to look out for. Brandon Jones, not the best of days for him. Did come home ninth, but you need to do a little bit better in these situations. Sam Mayer brought it home seventh, but just not a lot of stage points. He was already in the hole. He is a lot further back in points right now, and he's probably going to need a win at this point. Could do it. He's pretty good at the short tracks. You have Martinsville coming up, and he was there at the end of the race. Of course, Brandon Jones won in the spring, so I don't think those guys are completely out of it yet, but they're definitely well in the hole here with two races to go before the cut and the Final Four.
Yeah, I just do have one last thing on that. I don't see that yellow as a fun flag. I think that is NASCAR jumping the gun and being conservative because of all the negative ways that they have messed up and getting a call wrong in the opposite direction of what we're typically used to seeing this year.
I mean, that's fair. They did that at Kansas in the Xfinity Series race when they threw the yellow for rain, and the rain didn't show up for another 20, 30 minutes, and they're out there pacing under the yellow flags. So, it's definitely a fair take. They could just be erring on the side of caution, but sometimes that bites you. It did at Kansas, and it did here today. Yeah, as a junior fan and a junior motorsports fan, like Josh Berry winning, that's awesome. He's a great story. Like, that's somebody that's had to grind for everything, even though he's always had Dale Jr. there. Junior didn't really give him any handouts. Not that he should have to. Josh worked for everything. He went down in the late models and he kicked ass down there, and they're able to find sponsorship for him, and he's making the most of it. That's 5 wins in the last 2 seasons for him, driving a part-time schedule last year and full-time this year. Really cool to see him in the Final Four. I felt like he'd been slumping over the last couple weeks and months. He didn't feel like he had the speed that he had in the spring. So for him to be able to make that move and, find his way at the front at the end of the race and go to victory lane and punch his ticket into the Final Four, you get at least a good story out of it. So I'm very happy for Josh Berry. I don't know what he's going to be able to do at Phoenix, but the fact that he's there, I think that's awesome. And he is the only guy at Junior Motorsports right now who hasn't, signed off on his plans for next year. I think we'd all be very surprised if Josh wasn't back in the car. But, all the other seats are full. Allgaier's coming back. Brandon Jones is coming over. Sam Mayer's coming back. Josh Berry's the last piece. I'm 110% expecting him to be back in that car. So, we'll see. But just at least a good showing from Josh Berry. And even though I'm upset with how that race played out, I'm very happy for him. And it's going to be pretty cool to see him running for a championship comes Phoenix.
I would say as a JRM fan, you should be smiling right now because
I am. You know, I'm happy. It just
because
it
Noah
sucks.
should be fine.
Noah should be fine. Yeah.
But
So
I mean, it does. No, it'll be fine probably. But it does throw potentially Justin Allgaier into the mix. We are in a situation now where we've had a very solid Final Four for most, if not the whole season, of AJ Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, Justin Allgaier. One of them is not racing for a championship now. At least one.
I mean, yeah, I know we're talking about like AJ being on the outside right now, and I think Austin Hill was probably ahead of Barry in terms of guys throughout the playoffs, anyways, that you felt like, hey, he can make a run. He's still kind of lurking there. You're not wrong. It would be, I think it'd be shocking if Ty Gibbs didn't get in more so than Allgaier, but they're very close in points. You know, one slip up from either one, and if Austin Hill can have an Austin Hill day or AJ could turn it around, this was like the worst race he's had all year, so it's not going to be shocking if they go to Homestead and he gets like eight stage points and finishes sixth. Then, if one of those other two guys has a problem, then he's right back in it. So they're definitely not out of it, but it sucks for them. It sucks for them that Barry won the race, and they're in a much deeper hole than they could have been had that race played out. Taking a look at some noticeable finishers, I know one we're definitely going to circle to, and let's start off with her. Hailie Deegan, 13th place finish, qualified 20th, ran top 20, top 15 all day. Definitely exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect her to qualify that good. I felt she could go up there and run well. In her first truck start, she did finish 16th. She does have the ability to keep whatever she's driving clean. I know she's been caught up in a lot of wrecks in the truck series, but I felt like very few of those were her fault. And I think we've all agreed that the people in the Xfinity Series run a lot smarter than the people in the truck series. And I did feel like if she could keep the car clean, she'd have a solid day. Really wasn't expecting that good of a run out of her, though. That was pretty impressive for her first time out. Even if it is a Stewart Haas back car, still really good run for her.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen other guys run, cars sometimes that they just kind of do nothing. But she went up there, she raced. She was, like you said, in the top 20 all day. And it wasn't like a crazy race or anything in terms of a bunch of cars wrecking. If she had finished top 20, like top 20 at Texas, you literally got a top 20 by just surviving there, almost a top 10. But here she ran all day, went a lap down, but it was to the point where I think there were 10 cars on the lead lap. Got her lap back under the last caution and still made up some spots with it for a pretty solid finish, beating some guys that we've seen that maybe aren't in as good of equipment, but have been impressive. And I just think, honestly, more impressive than any run she's had in the truck series.
I mean, she ran, from what I'm seeing, about a quarter of the race in the top 15. I know, I wish we had like a top 20 stat, because it's funny, like there's only 5 spots different there, but I feel like the percentage would be a lot different. But, quarter of the race, top 15, that's not a bad first time showing, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot of shakeups at Stewart Haas across the board in all the series. We'll get to some of the Cup stuff when we move on to the Cup series, but I know there's some question marks on Riley Herbst. I don't know if Hailie Deegan's going to end up there, but even if she's driving like the 07 or the 08 next year, I mean, I feel like she's going to be okay,
I agree 100%.
But that was probably, the number one person you want to highlight. Some other guys up there, I mean, Nick Sanchez came in 12th. Anthony Alfredo got a top 10. Some surprisingly good runs for a lot of guys.
Nick Sanchez, Hailie Deegan, Kyle Weatherman, and then Raja, and even Parker Retzlaff for a while. Like, all kind of run around each other all day. All pretty young guys looking for opportunity. So it's definitely good to see them all run top 20, top 15 all day.
Yeah, Deegan, the best thing for her career at this point would be moving her to the Xfinity Series next year. There's far less depth of equipment in that series, and she's better in a less aerodynamic race car. So she's just going to keep having these bad runs in the Truck Series if you keep her down here, which is just going to absolutely shoot her confidence. So you push her up into the or the Xfinity Series, sorry.
Yeah, getting a little ahead of ourselves there.
Yeah. I think it's going to be much better for the long-term half of her career at this point. Even if she's maybe not as talented as you'd want her to be at that point, I think it's time.
It's like I'm torn on the Truck Series because I can't. Those drivers do race like idiots. Carson Hocevar, specifically, but like it's such a weird series now because I feel like they run the spec engine. Now, obviously, you know, the chassis are different, the bodies are different, but I think that's part of the reason why you were able to see, like, say, Ross Chastain, even though Ross, you know, great talent, contend for a championship driving for Nice Motorsports. So it's really hard to, like, gauge somebody like a Hailie Deegan because you feel like, well, if the cars are, you know, they got the same power plant under them, they're all pretty similar. Should she be running better? You know, maybe she just doesn't take to the trucks. I know a lot of people have used the Jimmy Johnson argument. I've always said Jimmy Johnson is the exception to the rule, where, you know, oh, he wasn't that great in the Xfinity Series, but he's 7-time champ in the Cup Series, and obviously I don't think it's going to be that extreme with somebody like Hailie Deegan moving up. But maybe that plays a role. I think a better one would probably be more like Harrison Burton, who didn't win at KBM and then won 4 races his first year driving for JGR in the Xfinity Series, or even Austin Cindric. You know, he only won 1 truck race, looked like he was lost at times on the ovals, and he became an Xfinity champion and somebody that I think in the Cup Series is going to have a really good career based on what we've seen this year. So, you know, maybe it is a truck problem. And if it is a truck problem, I think NASCAR needs to revisit that and try to figure out what to do to make them more suitable compared to the other series. Make it more of an actual building block where you could go and develop, because it's not just Hailie Deegan. You know, there's a couple of guys now that you've seen a lot of differences as they move up the ladder. And I think maybe, as fun as the trucks could be, they might need to take a look at something there.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a great series to harbor developments of drivers, period. I mean, when the 550 package was a thing with the Cup Series, there was the argument out there that it was more similar to the Cup car than the Xfinity car, but that's gone out the window now. So, you know, there's just not a lot going on down in that series, and also like an extreme, like not talked about enough. It's an extremely limited amount of track time as well. Like they don't race a lot of races. Their races are very short, and 9 out of 10 times you're going to get wrecked by a guy like Hocevar 50 laps into the race. So you're not really going to get your time out there to start developing yourself. Versus,
Hey.
I'd rather log laps 2 laps down the Xfinity Series and have somebody running down in that series right now when it comes to developing talent.
Listen, I got to disagree on the Hocevar take. It's not 50 laps into the race. It's probably more like 12 laps to go. But
Yeah,
still, it's still like you gotta watch out for the 42 truck. I think Mark's touched on this a bunch of times too, and I think you just did right there. The amount of races that you have difference between the truck and the Xfinity Series is going to be highly beneficial in terms of her moving up. Just more track time is something she probably needs to develop, and you'll get that in the Xfinity Series.
And longer races, more weeks in a row with races. I think for actual development is just better.
Mm-hmm.
More of a variation in racetracks as well. I mean,
A lot more road courses, that's for sure. Maybe too much. I would definitely say so, but I think I was against it before this race of her moving up into next year. For next year, I think now it was too good of a run. It was too good of a run not to. And again, she had a pretty decent showing her first truck start a couple years ago, but just with how the truck series has been this year, I think you got to move her up, and it's going to be interesting to see what the field is like when they start the next season. I know you have guys like Gregson, Gibbs, more than likely has not official yet, but I think we all agree he's going to the 18 car, and AJ moving up. You do have Chandler Smith moving to Colleague, and then I think we're going to get some combination of Sammy Smith, John Hunter Nemechek, Corey Heim. A lot of rumors around them, but I think you're going to have the same amount of quality drivers, so I don't necessarily think it's going to open a playoff spot up for like some people. I think you also have to take account of Sheldon Creed not shooting himself in the foot every week, hopefully, and maybe Landon Castle's team doesn't get disqualified from a race. So I think getting into the playoffs is probably going to be just as hard as it was this year. I don't know if she'll be able to do that, but I feel pretty confident she'll be able. She'll be close. I mean, if you're in a Stewart Haas car too, like that's definitely going to help. She might be like right on the outside looking in, and this is all after one race. It's really hard to gauge that after just one start, but I think she could probably run with the likes of our motorsports, and they were just outside of the bubble. And if she could do that and keep the car clean next year, I'd say that's a successful season. I know there's people that are going to just expect her to do better than that, but
it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to take a jump in Xfinity Series and talent too. Like you don't see truck driver go from like struggling to having that year where they start to get a lot better versus like look at Herbst this year. Like you have to get time in that series to make that jump. Xfinity Series is where those jumps in talent happen. They don't really happen in the lower series. So the sooner you get her there, the more time she has to start to work towards a cup seat, which with what we're going to get into a little later, SHR's going to be in a predicament. So
yeah, that's some crazy stuff that came kind of out of left field from Bob Pockris. Actually, what do you guys think?
First, I think. Actually.
Should we jump into the Stewart Haas news?
It was pre-race.
All right, I think that's fair. Any final thoughts on the Xfinity race then?
No, I mean, there are a lot of guys I hope we see full time next year, and something, which I mean relates to the news for Stewart Haas too. So
yeah, that was a whopper. So I saw Bob first, but go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead and lay out what the tweet says.
Yeah. Well, I saw Bob's tweet. I believe Jeremy said there was one from Jenna. I don't know if I saw
they substantially say the same thing.
So yeah, it's pretty much the same deal here, but it sounds like we have some internal fighting over at Stewart Haas right now. Gene Haas, he wants Cole Custer back in the car, which makes sense given the relationship with his dad. And Tony Stewart apparently wants him out. Tony Stewart wants him out. He wants Ryan Preece in the car. As a Ryan Preece fan, I do want that to happen.
Of course.
Yes.
Well, let's start off with one thing. One, long talked house. I don't know if we ever had a confirmation of this, but every time I talk about Cole Custer being stuck with Shiplet, you always talk about Tony Stewart doesn't like Cole Custer.
Well, apparently that's true.
I don't know if that came from some other rumor, but that seems pretty clear. The fact that Gene would leak this seems shocking to me.
Well, I mean, it's not that he leaked it. He literally said it to a reporter.
Sure, but
it.
I guess that's true. Can you leak your own information? But the fact that he would say this, period, is like borderline shock, because this isn't a trying to decide between two drivers outside your organization or signing a cup driver or going with it. No, this is the guy that's in the car now. One of us doesn't like him, and we're just trying to figure out what to do. Like, how does Cole Custer continue in the car at this point?
I don't know.
One would ask, how does his dad continue working for the organization?
It is insane. I mean, you have Tony, like, is there a chance? Obviously, I think what happened at the Roval and the penalty that came down, it's actually kind of funny he'd be defending Cole Custer at that point for that situation. I guess with all the fines and stuff, they got hit pretty good there too in the pocket.
Listen, Tony Stewart may not like Cole Custer.
Yeah.
Tony Stewart may not like Cole Custer, but I think he hates NASCAR more.
Yeah, I mean, just crazy that this would come out in this situation now, and just, man.
Like, if no offense to Preece, I obviously want Preece full time and something, but it's not like he ran 10 truck races and won 5 of them.
No.
Like, it's not like he just completed a championship caliber season. Like, he's part time. Obviously, should have been full time in something. And was impressive, but it's one I just don't feel like he's going anywhere. So I don't think there's a huge rush. And in fact, what Gene said about the fact that they expect Harvick to leave after next year.
And
I was gonna say Bob only said Harvick, which was interesting to me. Bob only mentioned Harvick, but Jennifer Fryer did mention Almirola. the fact that he expects one, maybe both of them to be gone next year almost feels like you would rather not move Priest up to Cup.
Wait.
And just wait a year, right? Because, like, not that Cole Custer is going to end up anywhere else, but it feels weird to move Cole Custer down
and then
to
back
move him
up
the next year.
Yeah,
I don't know if they'd be moving him down. I feel like they could just shift him over to Rick Ware Racing. That was the rumor when it was thought that Kyle Busch might be coming there.
That is true. And I don't think that would make a lot of sense in other situations, but in the situation where you think he'll be back in the car the next year, I can see it making a little more sense.
So here's a crazy thing that just came to my mind literally right now. What if this is because they don't have anywhere else to put Priest? What if the plan was, we'll move Haley Deegan to the Xfinity Series because we have to. Maybe Riley Herbst's still there, maybe he's not. And then we'll put Priest in the 17 truck. But with the rumors going that they're going to Toyota now, he doesn't have that ride, because I felt like he could have ended up there full time, and if he has this deal with Stewart Haas, they're not going to put him in a Toyota. So maybe he just needs a place to go, and Tony would just rather move him up to the Cup Series because he thinks he's bigger than Cole Custer.
I feel like if Ford has a play, they could get a second. Has anything in play here, they could get a second truck out of front row.
That's possible. If
that was really the case, like Ford has no development team down there now. They could just have front row. Like,
hey, Kozlowski's a team owner again. Maybe if I help BKR again.
Well, if you listen to some people, Brad was talking about going to Dodge. So who knows?
I think. Well, that's true. That's true. I think 100% Brad intends to open up a truck team again, but I don't think he's going to do that until they're a very well situated Cup team. There's. Like, obviously, you want to develop your own talent, but at the end of the day, when Toyota does it all for you, is it even worth the money? Toyota does it and then just ditches their drivers. So,
well, they don't ditch them as much as they don't have anywhere to put them.
I feel there's been some cases they've ditched them. Like, it felt like they ditched Daniel Suarez. Granted, that's at the Cup level. That's after they're already there, but it felt like they ditched him. They didn't ditch Eric Jones. I think they intended to just swap rides with him and Christopher Bell, but then when the 95 pulled out, he kind of got screwed. And luckily for both of Suarez and Jones, I think things worked out for him. So at least they have that going for him.
Jones probably wishes he just got a fair shake through the end of Toyota at least and was still there. But Suarez, I would agree with. But yeah, no, I mean, just crazy news. To be just so, like, if he said, "Oh, we're still considering our options on the 41." There's a couple guys we're looking at. Like, it's not as bad, right? Like, it's just not as bad. But when you're out here, like, yeah, another guy, he wants Ryan Priest, but I'm like, hold your horses. Let's just keep Cole Custer here. Like, that's what it feels like happened.
I think this partially goes to. I mean, I can't speak for Gene leaking this out, but I think with Tony and Cole, and this is just somebody from the outside who you read kind of between the lines on what gets leaked out there. It never felt like, and this is going way back now, never felt like Tony wanted to get rid of Suarez after 1 year. That felt like it was a Gene move, and I feel like it kind of goes back to that, where Tony might just have resented Cole Custer since that point. And
when you look at what Suarez is doing now, too.
I mean, I would rather have Daniel Suarez in the car than Cole Custer.
Suarez has gotten such a short end of a stick so many times. It's so great that he's finally somewhere that appreciates him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing a real good job this year, but man, just it's crazy news. I don't remember something like this ever happening in terms of just a driver issue. I almost kind of feel like, too, maybe Gene put this out there because maybe he thinks people are just going to rally around Cole Custer, and I kind of feel like it's been more like,
well, no, I think with this new Cole Custer already not an internet favorite, and if the option is Cole Custer, Ryan Priest, the internet chooses Ryan Priest.
And like, personally, this is going to sound a little weird, but like, as a Priest fan, I kind of want him in the Xfinity or the Truck Series more. Because I think he could win. He could contend for the championships in those series. Like, I like him. He's a New England driver. I don't know if he has that level of ability in the Cup Series. I feel like he's more of an Eric Almirola, and kind of what do you need
That is the
Eric
overall
Almirola
years. Like,
if
how
you
much of an
have Eric
upgrade
Almirola?
actually is he?
I think he's an upgrade, but
But
like
how much?
it's well, how much better do you think Eric Almirola is than Cole Custer? Because I
Not a
think that's
whole
the
lot.
upgrade. Yeah, that's the upgrade in my eyes. At least right now. Maybe Priest gets in that car and he does, really good, and he does better than even I expect. But I kind of think that's the line. And I'm with you. Like Cole Custer, while he hasn't performed in the Cup Series, like he's still young. Like Priest is in his 30s. I don't know how much more developing he could get, unless like he has a Truex surge here where kind of just comes out of nowhere if you put the right people around him, and that's asking a lot. I am not saying that's going to happen
That's kind of
whatsoever.
1 million.
That's what you're hoping for. Like that's literally what you're hoping for, that you pick up on some damaged goods, a cast off product, and you put something around him, and boom, you're a contender overnight. And I don't think that's going to happen.
I'd rather bet on somebody who's still developing than a true X type surge. If I had to
No,
put my money
100%.
somewhere.
You've only seen that like twice, I feel like, really in the modern era. One's Martin Truex Jr. and one's Dale Jarrett. Like,
but you can
that's
see
it.
kids turn around their careers. Like that happens. Like we've seen that.
Hey, you have. I mean, you mentioned Suarez. You mentioned. I mean, I don't know if he turned it around, but Eric Jones has looked a lot better in the 43 car. Sometimes it just takes a change of scenery or something. But like,
Joey
I think for
Logano
Custer,
even.
yeah, that's
way
one.
back.
Yes, that one, very, very good point. Joey Logano definitely did there. I think I'd probably want Cole Custer to at least get a chance with another crew chief, but I don't think Tony Stewart wants that at this point. So, just crazy news coming out of there. And at the end of the day, that wasn't like the craziest thing that happened in this race. I guess that was before the race, but let's fast forward to the actual race now. Bubba Wallace looking really, really good at the beginning of the race. Won stage one. You're feeling like, hey man, here we go again. Like he looked good at Kansas. This is probably the closest track we've been to since then. He's out front. He's led a bunch of laps. He could contend for the win. Racing Kyle Larson for position early in stage two. Larson runs him up the track, and we've seen him make this move time and time again this year. And Bubba Wallace just said no. He chases him down the track. Right hooks him at 180 miles an hour. And I said something like this was going to happen this year. I thought it'd be in the Xfinity Series to Ty Gibbs. I wasn't expecting this. Larson spins back up the track. Wallace spins up the track. Christopher Bell, after everything he's gone through the last couple weeks, nowhere to go, gets taken out in the accident. Wallace tries getting into it with Larson after. Kyle Larson at least kind of looks like, yo, man, what was that for? I'd have to say, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't have run him in the wall. My thoughts on this, what Bubba did, pretty crazy, almost inexcusable. I know I've said this before, where if you're the person getting hooked, if you deserved it, like I feel like Kyle Larson probably did, especially with how he's run people this year, I don't feel bad for Kyle Larson. That doesn't mean Bubba Wallace should have done what he did.
No, I mean, I agree. I always rally against right-rearing people, and I mean, I have to do it here too. Just you don't do it; it's inherently super dangerous. I do think that it would be better to wreck someone under caution than right-rearing them here. Just in terms of that, it felt like I almost sometimes feel like people think you should just wreck going 160 and that's fine, but he should likely be suspended. I don't really care that Bell got caught up in it. It's unfortunate for him, but it's an unintended side effect of it. I don't think you necessarily punish people for that, but him being suspended just for wrecking Larson the way he did is justified. Should it be what they do?
I just think, unnecessary. I mean, there's other ways to wreck the guy. Your car wasn't destroyed. You had a really good car. We've seen all year long. If you don't break the toe link, these things are fixable. Still could have went on to win the race. So you look at it from, your own team's perspective. Like, think of all your guys at the shop that put together the race cars and everything. Like, I mean, it's a pretty selfish move all around. And then to wreck the guy the way he wrecked the guy is obviously a big no. I mean, you just don't right rear somebody at these speeds, especially with the safety concerns we've had all year long. It's just, and on top of that, he made himself hit hard too. Like, think about your own health. I mean, it
Number
just,
one rule of stock car racing, he broke it. Like, he wrecked himself. So you're not wrong there.
I just, and then the shove to Larson, that stuff's whatever. But, it didn't look so bad on TV. I did see another angle on Twitter from the stands. He actually got Larson pretty good, kind of pushed Larson right into the deck lid of his own car, and Larson kind of bent over like a pretzel, which was kind of funny. But, just, would have liked to see Larson kind of push back, maybe got a nice little fight out of it, just from an entertainment perspective. But
I don't know how that didn't start a fight. I don't know how.
And, and then you're gonna have people like Jeff Aviano on Twitter trying to make this about something else, which is just stop.
Yeah, no.
You're reaching so damn hard trying to make this about the whole Kyle Larson stuff. And I don't even need to say what I'm talking about for people to know what I'm talking about.
We know what you're talking about, and like when you see that on social media, like it's kind of like, really, dude. Like, listen, that had nothing to do with it. It had everything to probably do with the fact that, Kyle Larson has raced people like this all year. Like, this is a lot more similar to Joey Logano and Matt Kenseth, where, Joey Logano, he's an aggressive driver, he pushes the issue, and somebody thought he stepped over the line, and that person was Matt Kenseth, and he took care of it. And, I don't know if Bubba and Larson have had any altercations this year, but you look at Larson so far this year. I guess indirectly they did have one, because you go starting at the Clash. Larson just straight up dumped Justin Haley. You go to Auto Club a couple weeks later, he walled Chase Elliott. You go to Talladega, which is one that I forgot about, but his move at the end of that race, and granted, Talladega's Talladega, but that caused a huge wreck that took out both 2311 cars. You have the incident with Chase Elliott at Watkins Glen, which, yeah, that's racing for the wind at the end of the race, but like, own up to it. Don't be like, oh, that's what I wanted to do. Like, no, you screwed up, you locked up your brakes, and you ran your teammate off the track. And I feel like I'm missing one still, but you add this one onto it. Bubba crossed the line in terms of how he reacted, but I don't feel bad for Kyle Larson at all.
Larson's had it coming.
Yes. Bubba,
not like that. That's the issue.
If like Bubba instead was, and I don't know how this works with the setup to the wreck, but instead is on the inside and literally walls Larson, I don't think Bubba deserves any kind of penalty at all. It's just, to me, it's the
so
right rearing of the car. Plus, as they certainly alluded to, and I mean, and Tav kind of even alluded to, like, there was no guarantee that car was broke anyway.
It wasn't.
Like,
it very obviously wasn't. He turned left perfectly fine to chase Larson down the racetrack.
If your argument was the car was broke, that's the best looking broke race car I've seen.
That wasn't my point. My point was in terms of their race could have easily not been over.
No, right, and I have an issue with it from that perspective too, because it's extremely selfish to your own team. Like, these guys go out there, they work for you every week. They have you in a position where your car is capable of winning. Yeah, it sucks. Someone ran you in the wall. It's going to affect your day. You are not out of that race.
If he did a better job of wrecking him, though, it wouldn't have been the end of his day. Like,
yeah, it was stupid, hot-headed action, heat in the moment. You give Bubba a chance to change his mind on making that decision. Obviously, he's not going to do it again, but he did it. So now that's the world we're living in, and that's the world we need to talk about.
So, since it's the world we live in, too, looking at possible penalties on this, NASCAR did change the rules after the Joey Logano, Matt Kenseth incident, where an action like this can result in points penalties, monetary fines, and or suspensions. Now, after diving into the rule, this was specifically made for taking out a playoff driver, which Larson is not a playoff driver, but the car is still in the playoffs. So now you're in this gray area, and obviously Christopher Bell in the playoffs, but this rule states it is about intentionally wrecking a playoff contender. Christopher Bell, while he was collateral damage, was not the person Bubba was going after. So I do think, and Mark already mentioned it, you kind of have to remove Christopher Bell from this, even though he got caught up in it.
Yeah, Bell just needed to do a better job and not be in the wrong spot at the wrong time. That's really what that comes down to.
Yeah, it sucks for him, but that's racing.
Because like
No,
yeah,
but I mean that's
no.
racing. You know, like there's nothing he could do. It's a split-second decision. I'm not saying Christopher Bell is a hack because he didn't miss the
No,
wreck.
no, that's not
right.
what. Yeah, I was
That's
just
not
making.
what we're saying there. But you know that raises the question here. Like if Larson was still in the playoffs, I think 100% you have to suspend Bubba Wallace based on this rule. To the letter of what this rule is, he should be suspended. Given that
Well, I think
he's not in, but the car is, does this really open up the door for a suspension?
The thing is, I think that the distinction between this and Logano and Kenseth, for example, is Kenseth was already taken out in that race.
That's also true. Yes.
Wasn't the race also where the incident occurred, which certainly makes it far more premeditated. Like the fact that this was not immediately after. Like if Larson gets away, right? There is a chance that Bubba doesn't get up there and wrecks him because 5 seconds have passed, and that's all it takes sometimes for cooler heads to prevail. So this is literally like immediately after. And they're racing for position. Like I don't think that by saying, "Oh, you can't do anything to a playoff driver," blanket, you kind of just open the door to let them just do whatever they want. But this, to me, they're just not the same situations.
Yeah, I just I think Bubba's biggest issue here is. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, still think he deserves to be suspended. I want to make that clear. I still think that's a fine suspension, but I don't think it's under this rule. I think putting it under this rule gives playoff drivers too much power, honestly.
Yeah, Bubba's biggest issue here is, and obviously we don't have the actual rule book because NASCAR is a dumb sport. Someone needs to cyberbully. Someone needs to cyberbully Jim Utter into leaking that. Then I might actually respect Jim Utter as a
Just
person.
like
he's on there on Twitter right now, just like yelling at people. That's not the rule book. It's like, well, sorry, we don't know.
The lack of it's something I've talked about a lot lately. Just the lack of willingness to be more transparent from NASCAR. Yep. Like starting off with like just the random car selector. None of us think it's random, so why not just stop calling it random? I think it's perfectly justified to be like, this car ran faster than we think it should have today. We're going to take it back to the shop and look at it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Instead, they have this pretend car that gets taken. A lot of times it's very clear, like, well, who had a better day than others? But then after Talladega, the 4 gets taken. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, but it certainly doesn't seem like one.
But back to Bubba here. I think Bubba's bigger issue here than like any like the rule Brandon's going into or anything is, while we do not have access to the rule book or the driver's code of conduct, I'll be damned if Bubba did not violate many rules plus the code of conduct today. So that's where you might start to see more so of a possibility of him getting suspended for something. Like, for one, right rearing somebody at a high speed, NASCAR has penalized that in the past. We've seen it.
We've also seen them just put a driver on probation for it before.
And then you get the shove after as well. That's something NASCAR will almost definitely, like, if they don't want to penalize the wreck because, Bubba went in the interview and said the car broke after, and NASCAR's like, oh, well, he could be telling the truth, at the very least, they're going to fine him for the shove just so there's something out of this. It's just going to come down to how much does NASCAR really want to get involved here.
That's fair. I gotta say, it's not like they're going to be able to go and see if the car was broke or not, because Bubba...
It was damn broke after the fact.
It was broke after. So, no way to really figure that one out. But man, just like, that's probably the craziest thing I've seen on a racetrack since, like, Logano took Matt Kenseth out. Like, you don't see that, and if he didn't violate any actual written rule, I'm willing to bet that the unwritten, like, driver code of conduct that these guys have, as you've already mentioned, hooking somebody in the right rear is not something that you do.
Detrimental to stock car racing.
Yeah, that's also fair. But man, I am very interested to see what NASCAR does here, because that was a fully loaded incident that had a lot of owner playoffs, driver playoffs, and just race in general, just implications and stuff that happened. And with everything that's been going on, obviously we were getting on NASCAR in the Xfinity race. We haven't had like a lot of driver issues when we've been making like, man, this has been a circus the last 2 months. That one is right up there with some of the worst things that have happened in this stretch.
And this is a very, very important moment for NASCAR because they are going to be setting a precedent with this decision.
I've always felt like this isn't the first time they've been in this situation. I feel like they'll let stuff go, but when it starts getting too crazy, whoever just steps over that line like too far last, they get hammered. Like, I truly feel like in 2015, if you didn't have Kevin Harvick take out the field at the end of the Talladega race, where it felt like, okay, the drivers are losing control here, and NASCAR didn't do anything about it, I think that indirectly, maybe it did directly play into Matt Kenseth getting suspended, because like what Harvick did was ridiculous. There just wasn't the evidence there. They didn't say anything on the radio. You can't prove that he was manipulating the race. I think at that point, even though it looked completely blatant what he did, especially given the situation with his car, and that was going to keep him in the playoffs, you can't be 100% sure. You can't, throw down the penalty there, which is also the reason why I kind of feel like even if Cole Custer did it on purpose, last week, I don't know if enough's there, but this kind of feels like that second accident where the sport's already on edge, and like that moment kind of pushed him over. Like, we have to rein these guys in because they are out of freaking control right now. Today kind of felt like that, where everybody's already on edge. Everything's been crazy the last 2 months, and that might be the one that they just say, all right, we're done. That's it. No more fun. We have to step in here. That was over the line, and Bubba, in this case, you're gonna have to sit out for a little while.
Well, and what do we do if later this week we have the headline pop up, let's say Wednesday afternoon, that somebody else is going to be driving the 5 car next weekend because of a concussion? Which, Larson looked okay, but, I don't
Alex
think
looked
anybody...
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Alex
didn't look okay in retrospect when you look at the in-car footage that they, kind of got out there, but...
And you listen
That is true. That is true.
But
you listen to the audio, too, after the race. Yeah.
Right. And so... what if we come Wednesday afternoon and we get one of those headlines that, now not just Gregson's going to be in the 48, we got Justin Allgaier driving the 5 as well. And it's... What do you say to Bubba then? It's going to... I think it'd be Allgaier.
I think it'd be Allgaier, too.
I did too, but man, I would want Josh Berry.
Yeah, no, I mean, if that's the case, I think you have to sit Bubba out.
If it's Allgaier, if it's Allgaier, the car's just going to crash. He's going to finish 34th anyway.
Yeah, that's
true. Dude's so cursed in the Cup Series.
Hasn't had a clean racing forever.
We've seen NASCAR suspend crew members and stuff. Who was it that got in trouble for a fight with Clayton Hughes where they disabled him?
Oh man, was that was it Draconis?
Somebody. I don't know.
I don't remember either.
But what if Kyle Larson could never drive a stock car again? Then what do you say? Because now you're getting into because NASCAR set a precedent with the crew members and stuff. And
I think what happens out of the car is different from what's in the car. I think
but
a better comparison would be if Bubba came over and clocked Larson and dropped him and he missed the rest of the year because with a concussion.
Don't put NASCAR in a spot is where I was trying to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
To make a decision, because we all know they can't make a decision.
No.
So you give them a chance to make a decision, it's not going to be a good one.
No. Man, just we haven't even talked about the finish of the race yet.
No, damn good race.
Very unfortunate that's 3rd or 4th on the list of things to talk about. Joey Logano, man, hell of a run. His pit crew puts him behind the 8 ball there with a bad pit stop. Another yellow comes out, and Paul Wolfe, I think people have been criticizing him a lot over the last couple of years. He's kind of lost his edge in the strategy department. A+ call. Gets Logano on pit road. They get fresher tires, only about 13 laps. But he drove his ass off through the field, chased down Ross Chastain at the end of this race, made the pass with a couple laps to go. And Joey Logano, who's had just a typical Joey Logano sneaky good season. If you look at the non-playoff points, the full season points, granted drivers would drive differently. He's second in points, only 79 behind Chase Elliott. Just a sneaky year for Joey Logano, and he's going to be racing for a championship in a couple weeks at Phoenix.
Is it okay to call a champion of the sport underrated?
Yeah, I mean, if you think Joey Logano's underrated, I think depending on who you ask, I think a lot of people just think he's a squinty-eyed douche.
I think Joey Logano is never talked about in the conversations with your Kyle Busch level drivers or anything like that. And how many more years in a row does the guy need to prove he's just as good as those guys to start getting recognized
I think the
as?
problem. Well, I think the problem with Logano on that is like he's had some really good years, but like you look at Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick, for example, they have those like 8, 9 win seasons, and they
You're
have
right.
years where they've dominated the regular season. Logano hasn't dominated the regular season. I think the most wins he's had in a year is like 5 or 6. So
He
I
has
could
these
see
races
why.
where he just like he puts together a drive that it's
I mean,
like, man,
that was a championship caliber drive for
how many
sure.
guys in this sport could drive a race car in this situation as well as Joey Logano just drove his race car? Like it, I mean, he played everything picture perfect. Ross Chastain did everything perfectly defensively,
Hmm.
and Logano still found a way. I don't think a lot of guys. I think it's underappreciated how many guys could actually go win that race from second place, a second back with 10 laps left in a race.
Hmm.
Like, not to mention he drove away too. Like, it wasn't like he barely beat him.
You know, the fresh tires definitely helped there,
No,
but
for sure, but
it's not even that last restart. Like I felt like he was probably dead in the water on the restart where he took the tires. Like there's no way he could get through the field that quick, and he made it happen. Like
he has a
he
tendency to do
drove up.
that.
I'd have to see what he did on that restart where I think it was when Landon Castle spun. I think maybe they pit the yellow before that. I can't remember for
I think it
sure.
was the yellow before that because that
Or-
was the yellow where Byron pit and he was like the only one.
Oh no, because no, he was running with Blaney for like second, and then I think it was under that yellow where they had the bad pit stop. So I think it was when Suarez spun with Reddick. I got to go back and watch that restart before the Landon Castle spin because like I feel like you could tell me he passed like
Yeah.
5 or 6 cars right there. He might have actually passed a bunch there, but
Also, speaking of Blaney, we already passed the part of the race where this happened, but just to hit on it for a second, poor guy can't catch a break.
except his car.
Yeah.
His car broke.
Well, and then he was also threatening his future brother-in-law over the radio, which that's going to go over well on Thanksgiving. But
Man, like that was crazy when Byron's car snapped like that. Like it
yeah,
just
that
bottomed out
actually
and
wasn't
hopped
even
up the
Byron's
track.
fault. Like,
Yeah, no, he just
and I know you
bottomed
don't know
out.
that in the race car, but like these teams need to do better at telling their drivers, like, hey, that actually wasn't the guy's fault, because like that's how you get your driver in a hot-headed situation where they make a dumb mistake like Bubba.
Mhm.
Blaney thinks that Byron did something stupid, and then Byron makes another little mistake, and then Blaney right rears him. Like,
Yeah.
versus like nothing Byron can do there. It's just the car bottomed out. Like
Mhm.
probably the most aggressively I've seen a car bottom out in quite a long time.
Yeah, and there were a couple people that were like that, but Byron's obviously most notable with the cameras on him right there when it happened.
Hmm.
I know after that, when Blaney just his day ended up in a shower of sparks essentially. Did we ever get confirmation if the tire went down there? Because man, it looked like that might have been a suspension issue or something there when he was hopping up the track. It didn't look like any of the tires were down,
I don't see
at
how a
least from the camera
suspension could have
angles.
broke unless
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
it was a
it was
flaw.
weird.
he said he just got loose.
Hmm.
Did he?
Okay. Hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it didn't even look like that. Like the way that thing was wobbling. Like normally when you think of a car getting loose, it just
It was
snap.
happening today though. I mean, guys were
Mhm.
losing the cars today. So you had Suarez's spin, which like I mean that was inflicted by another driver.
Like
Kyle
obviously,
spin earlier.
obviously it's on the same track, but when you have this finish where Logano gets in compared to the finish where Logano got in 2020, like night and day with this car
Oh yeah, at least on the
these
mile and a half.
tracks, on these
Mhm.
tracks, not
Oh, you're
in
talking about the
Texas.
Kansas race?
Yeah,
Yeah.
When Ross slid up and blocked him, I was like, crap, here we go again. And Joey gathered it up, and he was by him like a lap and a half later.
See,
Like,
that's the big difference. Is like the cars still aren't the best directly behind somebody. You're never gonna fix that.
but
But this
the
car has made it to where you can move into another line.
wake is almost like the width of the car,
Right.
which is
and
why
you
anywhere
can
where you
move-
have multiple lanes of racing, the car is great.
Mhm.
But you take away those multiple lanes, and it doesn't do anywhere near as well.
But it's definitely an upgrade. There's some massive issues with the car.
Oh,
As
for
much
sure.
as much as
For
we
sure.
give NASCAR a hard time, and it's partially deserved. I mean, NASCAR deserves to get a hard time because what's wrong with the car is stuff that can't be wrong with the car.
And it's stuff that they were saying was wrong 2 years ago.
They got a
NASCAR
whole
defended.
extra year of development with this car and did not use any of that time to develop it, to test it. It just, and then I mean, when Byron had his hit, which that was pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah, I think that was like in
they
the spring.
They were talking about it being a hard hit, and they did nothing. Because here's the thing, right? Obviously, they would still be under a lot of pressure to fix the short tracks and then some of the road courses that have had issues. But people wouldn't be in scrap this car mode if it wasn't for the health concerns. If it wasn't for the force of these impacts. People still have issues with the car, but you have drivers, obviously not super loudly, but some of them calling for just an entirely new car.
I mean, that's fair. Unfortunately, I don't think they could rush that out.
No, obviously not. But that's my point. Just the frustration with this car, even though it has racing frustrations, are magnified greatly by the safety concerns. And it's unfortunate because when the car works, it does really good racing.
Mm-hmm.
Martinsville is going to be very interesting.
Well, especially
the word you're looking for is bad.
If what we've been hearing is true with some of the things the teams have been trying out, I think there's a real chance that this race in Martinsville might even be worse than the spring race. And a couple of us were there for the spring race, and it wasn't good. So it did snow. It did not the only race that it snowed at this year either. So.
I was cold, I was wet, and I was bored.
Yes, that was that was bad. I tried hyping myself up with like, oh man, the 24 and the 3 car running 1-2. That's something I never thought I'd see.
I thought there was no way that I was going to not wish I had gone to that race, and I don't wish I had gone to it.
I think you're probably glad you didn't.
No, exactly.
I probably wish you were at the night before, though.
Sure. In the weekend, but the race itself, no, I'm good.
The one you don't really feel bad about not being able to show up for. That's for sure. And I hope what I've been hearing about that is incorrect. I hope it's at least not as bad as what we saw in the spring. Because I know after that race, people were saying, "Oh, it'll be better." It was, just cold out of the realm of
gonna
just
be so
normalcy.
It's gonna be so much hotter.
They were right that it would be cold. Like that did cause it, but like this is a night race in almost November.
Yeah,
it's gonna be so much warmer.
Yeah, but then if the things that these teams have been working on, specifically with the shifting, if that comes to fruition on this, not good.
So what have you been hearing? Because I'm a little out of the loop on this.
So what I've been hearing on it is that these teams supposedly have been like developing a way with these shifters where you basically just you don't have to match the revs or anything. Like you could just go boom right into the next gear or right down a gear. Right. So if that's going on, like, if you're shifting, you don't match revs, maybe you could cause tire spin, maybe you could do something like that. If you could just blip right into it and not have to worry about matching revs or anything like that, it's going to be a long day because you're not even going to have the opportunity to get close. So I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope what I'm hearing is wrong about that. But if that happens to be the case, that Martinsville race is basically going to be like a F1 race at freaking Monaco, where you better qualify good and your pit crew better not screw up.
If we get a caution laps 100 or later, that race is going to turn into a shit show. Because you have no opportunity to pass if you don't get it done right then and there.
Well, we're guaranteed a caution at that point in the race, and you get the stages.
He meant like at the end of the race.
At the end of the race, yeah.
You said after lap 100. Oh, you mean 100
No, 100 to go. 100 to go.
Okay,
100 to go.
sorry.
Like, no, that's going. That you're 100% right. That's gonna become a clown show. It's gonna be awful.
Get the music ready.
It's been getting a workout the last couple races. I hope it could take a week off, but I'm not so sure. I might have to play
Homestead will be Well, will the clown music be for Gregson
The
blowing
clown
another
music,
race?
yeah, the
Homestead?
clown music might be for Gregson blowing
Maybe
another
this
race.
year. Maybe this year will actually be his fault. Maybe that'll be what's different. Not that he wins the race, just that it's actually straight up his fault.
Maybe Cole Custer can go out there and throw his balls up on the dash and flip off NASCAR.
Man, I think what's going to happen is like Noah's going to wreck himself on Saturday, and then he's going to somehow win the Cup race.
He's going to move Kyle Larson out of the way to win the Cup race.
Oh man, teammates, man, you can't. Well, no, I can't say you can't do that. Larson's done that a couple times this year, so
yeah.
Or maybe he'll move Justin Allgaier out of the way for the win.
Oh Lord!
On Sunday.
Yeah,
if Justin Allgaier got to the point in the Cup race where he got moved out of the way for the win, that is a successful day for Justin Allgaier.
What's funny is I saw maybe it was a Reddit thread earlier talking about how both the 45 and the 23 might need replacement drivers next week. And what if the 5 and the 48 also had them, man?
Oh my God!
Why would the 23 need a replacement? What did I miss with Gibbs?
Well, Gibbs already being the replacement.
Oh, got it. I understand that. Well, you can make the argument that Bubba Wallace is the replacement driver of the 45.
That's
true.
Not incorrect. Not incorrect, I suppose.
Man, maybe John Hunter Nemechek will finally get a chance to get behind the wheel of a 2311 car.
Oh man!
But man, quick look at the points though. Before we
don't need to do that.
No, we don't need to do that. It's been so bad. Real quick rundown. Joey Logano obviously in. Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, the drivers that are in right now. No one really out. Even Christopher Bell, who got wrecked. Homestead, everybody really still alive. I think Bell's the furthest one back. He's 23 out. So, but yeah, like, Homestead's going to be good. Normally, I feel like after this race, or not Vegas specifically, but after the first race in this round, you have one guy at least who you're like, oh, they're in a must-win situation. Not really the case here. Christopher Bell's a little further back, but, if he runs a clean race, doesn't have any issues, he could put himself in a point position where he's good. Probably going to be dependent on who wins, of course, but, I think we have 8 guys still alive here going into next week at Homestead, so a plus there at least for NASCAR and the Cup Series. Taking a look at our bets and picks. Well, that was bad, wasn't it?
Well, it was bad. It was bad, but we'll get to that.
All right, you got something else? First?
I do want to just in the Cup Series give out a couple people we don't talk about, but they do good. We don't talk about them because they're not in the playoffs anymore. But Kyle, back-to-back top 5s, maybe for the first time this season.
It was before the spring, so
brought home in third. Martin Truex Jr. out of top 10. I don't know if he's done that in the playoffs yet either. It's a good run from Eric Jones, another top 10 for the 43, continuing to set the best mark in over 30 years. AJ Allmendinger, top 10 in the 16 car, finished 9th. I don't think he needs to. Well, maybe he'll need to because of if it goes like this year, but I don't think he'll need to win next year to be able to fight for playoffs should there be spots available on points. It's been really solid, and I think we'll see next year more than we ever saw from him in the Cup Series. And Austin Dillon, top 10. He has another solid finish to a solid season.
Did Haley drop out of the top 10?
Yeah, his tires were old. He was still 14th though, so still solid. Also, Noah Gragson brought home 11th. So
he hung in there though, man.
He was.
Haley fought.
Yeah, Haley had a shot. Looked like maybe could do it, and then looked like Chase Briscoe was. Oh boy. But before
he won that race.
It was. I thought he was going to, man. If before we go into the bets, you want to look at somehow Joey Logano not the championship favorite still. You would think being locked in would he is second, but he is plus 330. Chase still plus 210, and that's just if you bet on that, you're bad.
Listen, we talked about this heading into this race. not the best round for Chase.
No,
like in
it's
terms
not.
of what's coming up. And yeah, that wasn't good. I feel like the only way this could have gone worse for him is if, well, obviously if Chase Briscoe won, that would have been disastrous. If Ross Chastain was able to hold on to win, that's also not as good. Like, at least Chase is closer to Ross than he would have been to Logano had Logano not won the race. So he caught some breaks there, especially with how the field got shuffled around there at the end of the race. And, I don't think we mentioned it. Chase Elliott, invisible the whole day. He ran, like you said, like 20th the whole race? At least that's what it felt like.
15th to 20th. He had, in the very, very first run before the first pit stop, they had driven up to like 13th or 14th, and that would have been the highest they were all day. Like, I don't know what they did after that, but it never worked. It was bad. It was bad.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You were the first one to say it. Like, these races,
they're not good for him. Martinsville's whatever. I mean, it's been historically a pretty good track for him, but it's going to be 100% based on where you qualify and if your pit crew doesn't make any mistakes. That feels like what's going to determine your whole race.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you look at the first round, like you have, a couple short tracks and, intermediates and stuff in there. And I know we had a great second round, but again, you pointed this out. Those races in the second round mean absolutely nothing to everything else that's in the playoffs.
Texas, especially Texas now, Talladega, the Roval could not be any more inapplicable to anywhere than they are. So I certainly didn't like him before, don't like him now. I'm pretty sure if his odds went down, they only went down 10. He was
plus 200.
So yeah, 200. So they only went from 200 to 210 with the race he had. That's absolutely insane. Now this guy obviously furthest back, but you can again get Christopher Bell pretty good odds here, plus 2,500. I don't hate those. He can. I mean, Martinsville going to be Martinsville, and I think he could certainly go out and win Homestead.
Plus 2,500. That's what I've been getting him all year. He's only 23 points out. Like, I didn't bet him before the Roval because I thought he had to win the race, and I thought he had no shot in hell to win that race. That's why I didn't bet him then.
Bell is the lowest odds to win.
So
highest, I guess.
My thing is, if you're gonna bet on Belver, you might as well parlay it with a race win at Ivor Homestead or Martinsville.
If it lets you,
last year. I don't know that he's far enough back that's necessarily a requirement yet.
I don't know.
Just especially with the issues that people could easily have at Homestead. Like, I don't think it will. It is not impossible. We go into Homestead and these tires start blowing after 35 laps again. Like, that is something we are going to. Obviously, it's his last race. That's a high banked oval. But next year, as we go into these tracks, it's going to be on people's minds until it's clearly not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people thought it would be an issue today. The tires were wearing as we want them to, but they weren't blowing. But they did blow here, not here being Vegas, in the spring. So I have no confidence that we're going to necessarily get through Homestead without tire issues.
Yeah, this is probably something I don't think a lot of people thought of at the beginning of the year when they announced the schedule last year, but having Homestead where it is right now with a car that you've barely driven there, I know they had a tire test, I believe, recently, but man, that is going to be a little sketchy next week when you haven't been on this track, in racing conditions all year. Those tires could be the big story after that race. Hopefully they're not, but man, it's a real possibility.
For the Xfinity Series odds, Josh Berry locked in, not the favorite. He is plus 350. It makes a little bit more sense here because whereas in the Cup Series, I don't think anyone's safe. I don't think anyone can just ride. Like, I think Ross is, what was he, like, up 20?
I think he was 19. I think Chase was 17. I think
so
they were real close.
You certainly can't act like like Ross can't just cruise to the Final Four. Whereas I think in the Xfinity Series, in all likelihood, Gregson and probably even Ty Gibbs could cruise. And they are actually our co-favorites at 200. Third guy that is good odds to win in terms of just they think he has a good shot. Justin Allgaier at plus 550. And I don't think this gap is truly representative to how close it is after that, because AJ Allmendinger is next at plus 2,000 and Austin Hill is plus 3,000.
Mm-hmm. And they're only 15 and 16 points back. And
like,
You get to Phoenix, anything could happen.
I
So,
like those odds for them. Brandon Jones, Sam Mayer, a little bit too far back for me to really like them at 5,000. But AJ at 2,000, and I honestly, right now, I like Austin Hill's chances to get in more than AJ's.
I'd say he's probably been better at these tracks as of late that are coming up. At the very least, Homestead, Martinsville.
Yeah, Martinsville, who knows?
Yeah, he needs to have a good Homestead. He definitely needs to have a good Homestead if he wants a shot. That's for sure.
So I like Austin Hill at 3,000 and AJ at 2,000.
Mm-hmm. All right. How did our picks do?
Terrible. In the Xfinity Series, we both picked Noah Gragson to win. That did not happen.
Should have, maybe should have, but
you picked Riley Herbst as the value pick. I picked Austin Hill. What happened to Riley Herbst?
He spun out in qualifying and had to go from the back.
Oh yeah, and then he had like a penalty. Yeah.
I know I wasn't on for the preview show, but I did pick Josh Berry to win this week, and I did pick Joe Logano to win this week. So just throwing that out there.
All right, cool. Take your victory lap. I don't even care to go back and look at the chat to see if you're right at this point. You can take your win. We need to have something positive in this segment here.
Yeah, no.
Austin Hill finished 6th, and in our head-to-heads, I took Hill over Berry. And I, to be fair, did not think that Hill was necessarily going to do a lot better than Berry, but Hill was like plus 130, which is crazy in heads-up odds. That obviously didn't hit. And you picked Trevor Bayne over Justin Allgaier, which I mistakenly marked green because that also did not hit. Although, to be fair, if Trevor Bayne had avoided issues with the end of that race, who knows if he could have won, but he had to go to the back at least once while they had a good car all day. So he did run well. He did well. We'll see if we continue to see him next year. I hope so.
I'd love to see him full time.
Yeah, I hope so.
You could definitely throw him in that like Nemechek, Heim, and Smith, where maybe one of them or Trevor Bayne ends up in a Gibbs car. We'll see.
For the Cup Series, I picked William Byron to win. You picked Christopher Bell to win. At least my driver finished. For the value pick, you picked Noah Gragson. I picked Bubba Wallace. At least your driver finished. For Group A, we had Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, and Tyler Reddick. The winner of this one is Denny Hamlin. We both picked Christopher Bell. For Group B, Kyle Larson, Ross Chastain, William Byron, and Ryan Blaney. We both picked William Byron. Winner was Ross Chastain. Group C, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace. We all picked Bubba Wallace. And it was, in fact, Kyle Busch. No, sorry, Joey Logano, because he won the race. And Group D, we actually picked someone different, Brandon. We picked someone different, so maybe we'll win this one. Chase Briscoe, I think you already know the answer to this question is no, we didn't. No. Kevin Harvick, Daniel Suarez, and Austin Dillon, and Chase Briscoe was the highest finishing of the group.
I need to stop betting Las Vegas because of my history of betting
never
track.
We have never before got nothing right. But today, we've been close. We've been close. At the Glen, we only got a single head-to-head in the Xfinity Series, right?
Maybe we can go back and say I was telling the truth about who I picked in the chat.
But we went a big O for here. But to be fair, that's our fault. We picked too much of the same group bets.
Man, yeah, it was rough. Like Vegas, I had a horrible Vegas here back in 2020 when there was that yellow that came out in green flag pit stops. That was like a lot. That was, at the time I wasn't betting as much as I did now. I think that was like over $1,000 swing with that yellow, because that's more when I was starting out. That was the one where Bowman and Denny were going to cycle out to race. Yeah. They were going to cycle out and race for the win, and that yellow came out in the middle of the cycle, and that screwed me. Like I went from winning around $1,000 to like losing $800. So like that was like an $1,800 swing because of a yellow flag.
One of those two drivers is never going to drive a stock car again. So
we shouldn't be laughing about that, but Listen. They have Blake Harris coming. Like I know you're upset and you're preparing for the worst, but I don't think they'd be announcing that Blake Harris is Alex Bowman's crew chief next
Of course
year.
they would.
He
They
was never
can't.
coming back.
They couldn't announce that he was going to be. They couldn't go Blake Harris to crew chief of the 48 next year because everyone would go, "Why does it say 48 and not Alex?"
Listen, I think there's a chance he'll be back for Phoenix, and hopefully that's the case. And if not, that's something I don't really think. Did we touch on that? Was that out when we did the preview show? I don't remember. The Blake the Harris news with Bowman. I don't know if that was out.
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
that's
Hell
a
of a hire.
sneaky
Hell of
good.
hell. I don't think it's sneaky good. I don't think
It's
you
good.
could. I don't think it could. It's to someone who's paying attention. Obviously, like my dad, no idea who he is, so it means nothing. I could even tell my dad, "Oh, he's Michael McDowell's crew chief." My dad will probably go, "What car does he drive?" But to the people that pay attention, to people that care about who someone's crew chief is, I don't think there could be a more high profile, realistically higher in terms of what kind of impact they could bring. I mean, to say Michael McDowell's in the middle of a career season could not be a bigger understatement. Whoever
in the races that he was out on suspension were some of the worst races he's had all year.
Yeah,
it is a hell of a hire. It'll be very interesting to see what driver ends up benefiting.
I was gonna say, whoever is driving the 48 next year, I expect very, very big things from them.
Mm-hmm. So that will be something to keep an eye on.
Kind of devastating for Michael McDowell, to be honest.
Oh yeah, no, it really just came out of the blue by the sound of it. I don't think anybody expected that to happen.
Joking about Bowman's future aside, as I am a depressed Alex Bowman fan, he's going to be back in the car next year, and him and Greg have a great relationship, but I mean, I don't think Alex could even deny how much of an upgrade this truly is going to be for him next year. I mean,
on the surface, I would agree.
Rick made a great move, or whoever was in charge of this hire, I should say.
Jeff Gordon.
Move. Yeah.
I don't want to put too much expectations unduly on someone who might not even be in the car next year, but maybe, wins are hard to come by. So the win number isn't career setting, whatever. I expect career setting numbers in basically every other statistic.
Yeah.
And I think not meeting that, or at least being damn close, is borderline failure.
The car should be more consistent. That's been the issue under VI.
No, it has been the issues.
Resumes. There's weeks where they're out for lunch, and it's like, people out there on Twitter are always talking about how Bowman's the weakest link at the team, which may or may not be true. But I mean, you can't deny he's also got the worst crew chief situation. So
he might be the worst, the weakest link on that team. But at the same time, with how they were running before he got injured, that was probably definitely a top 10. You could really make the argument they were top 5 speed in that first round.
Listen, someone has to be the weakest link in that team.
Yeah.
So
right. But when your weakest link is Alex Bowman, you're doing a good job as an organization.
You got four strong teams there, and adding Blake Harris is definitely gonna improve them.
It's gonna improve the entire organization.
Yeah, that's for sure. But any other final thoughts besides the crew chief situation on the 48 car?
I don't know if we said this earlier, but race is official. Race is official. So, fortunately, no losing the win for Joe Logano, but our friend Mocha probably should go to Phoenix.
Yeah. Stats, man. Mocha's been to probably more races than I feel like any of us so far this year, and Joey Logano has a 4.6 average finish, I believe, what I calculated earlier. So we will let you know if Mocha is going to Phoenix, because if he is going to Phoenix, definitely hammer the Joey Logano top 5 bet, and probably the championship bet. That would be my guess. Definitely working out for him right now this year. Jeremy, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just, we'll see what Homestead brings. I'm hoping for Cole Custer to go out there and, maybe he'll throw up 2 birds, one for Tony and one for NASCAR.
For Tony, I don't know how Tony would feel about that. He'd be happy somebody won, but at the same time, he'd probably be like, crap, I have to keep this kid in the car now. So, hey, Cole Custer, you only got a couple races left in the year, but it does sound like you're racing for a job. So Homestead actually runs well there.
Best track for him to have.
Yeah,
in
it
this situation.
doesn't have the results, but kind of similar to Chase at Las Vegas until today, where I feel like he should have a lot of good runs here and no good finishes. Today, not the case. Cole Custer kind of the same at Homestead. He showed speed here. Does have an Xfinity Series win here, so knows how to get around the place. Big week for him next week. Definitely needs to step up. As for me, my final thought, please don't make me play the clown music again. Just NASCAR, give us a good, clean week. Homestead's a great track. I'm sure the racing is going to be even better than it was at Las Vegas this past weekend. Just don't make me do it. Let me put it aside and not have to use it for a long time. That's all I ask. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bernie Breakdown. We will be back to preview Homestead here in a couple of days, and I'm sure we'll have some type of news on the Bubba Wallace situation, and maybe we'll get some information on what's going on with the Cole Custer Stewart Haas appeal for what happened at the Roval. But until next time, guys, thanks for listening. Brandon Monroe here. Thanks for listening to the Bernie Breakdown. Remember to keep listening to us on your favorite podcasting platform. And remember to follow us at Bernie Breakdown on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and all of our other social media platforms.